Alright guys, here's a video for the practice quiz 5.1, 5.2, possibly the easiest quiz we have all year. It's on solving 1 and 2-step inequalities. One more thing before beginning, just remember the only difference between solving an equation and solving an inequality is that if you multiply or divide by a negative on your last step, that's when you flip the inequality symbol. So for example, if you had like x plus 3 equals 4, how do you solve that? You simply subtract 3 and subtract 3, giving you your final answer, x equals 1. Now, same deal if it were an inequality. Let's say you had an x plus 3 is greater than 4. You do the same exact thing, subtract 3, and your answer will be x is greater than 1. You see, the only thing is instead of an equal sign, you have a greater than sign. And the only difference is if you ever multiply or divide by a negative, that's when you flip your inequality symbol. So obviously right here we did not multiply by a negative on your last step. Right here we simply subtracted 3 on both sides. Now if you look at this one over here, on the other hand, how would we get rid of this negative 3? You would have to divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. That's when you're dividing by a negative, and that's the only time that your inequality must flip. So your final answer will be x is less than negative 4. Anyways, that's just a little warm-up. Let's get started on the actual questions. Question 1 is a inequality that we need to solve, and type in the solution without any spaces between your terms. So where's the x at? It's clearly on the left side of the inequality, and we want to isolate the x. You want to get x by itself, so we need to get rid of this negative 10 by doing the opposite, plus 10. So you go plus 10 here, and plus 10 over here. What you do to one side, you must do to the other. So we end up with a 4 on the right side. We did not multiply or divide by a negative, so it stays the same exact sign, and we have a negative x left over on the left side. Now you still want to get x by itself. You don't want the negative sign, so you either multiply both sides by negative 1 or divide both sides by negative 1. I am dividing both sides by a negative. Either way, that's the one difference between equations and inequalities, that if you multiply or divide by a negative on your last step, you have to flip this inequality symbol. So that greater than is going to become a less than. This is a regular x, and this is a negative 4. And this is your answer for your first question on the quiz. Type it in with no spaces between your terms. X is less than negative 4. So on this question it reads, which inequality represents the words at least? So you have to think about the words at least in a real world situation. For example, if I said, in order to vote, the requisite is that you have to be at least 18 years of age. At least 18 years of age. What does that mean? That means that you could be 18 years or older. So I mean, just off of that example, that you have to be at least 18 years of age, you would say your age has to be greater than or equal to 18. That's at least 18 years of age. I know that might be kind of confusing. Least, you're usually thinking smaller, but when you say at least, it has to be that value or bigger. So the simple answer to this question, what inequality represents at least, it would be a greater than or equal to symbol. Okay, let's move on. This question reads, your vehicle must be no more than 8 feet tall to enter the parking structure. What does no more than mean? Okay, what does the words no more than mean? Let's think about this. Your car, you don't want it to be taller than 8 feet tall, because if it's taller, it's probably going to hit the roof of the parking structure. So what inequality would represent this expression? Let's say the height of the vehicle must be no more than 8 feet tall. What does no more than 8 feet tall mean? It means actually less than or equal to 8. So this is the correct answer for this question. Let's move on. Question number 4, it says, what is the correct inequality of this graph right here? So we have this inequality. We know that it's at the value of 4, but it's an open dot. It's not a solid dot. You're not including 4. So that means that you have a 4, it's not including 4, so it's not going to have an or equal to, because it's not filled in. And it's going to the left, and I hope we remember anything to the left is less. Anything to the right is greater. That's great. I said great instead of right. Okay, so this is going to the left, which means x is less than x is less than the value of 4. Now, if that would have been a solid dot, it would be a less than or equal to. But that's just x is less than, because it's going to the left, 4. On this question, they give you a graph. It's a solid dot at 6 going to the right. Remember, anything on the left is less, anything on the right is greater. So it's going to the right. So what we're saying is the value 6, it is a solid dot, so it's 6 is greater than or equal to. Okay, greater than because it's going to the right, or equal to because it's a solid dot. So in reality, it should read this, that x is greater than or equal to 6. Okay, that's what we're looking for. But in the multiple choice answers, we have a's instead of x's. So maybe we could have put an a right here instead of an x. But still, a is greater than or equal to 6. It has to open up to the a. It has to have a solid line underneath it. So this one is opening up to the a, and it has a solid line underneath it. So this would be the correct answer right here. So pick this one. Okay, that would work. Again, all of these multiple choice options aren't written in the way that they should be when you graph. They all have the a on the left side. So if you wanted to, you could read it backwards. A is greater than or equal to 6. That's why it's going to the right. Or you could actually take all of these and flip them all over so you could see it the way we actually wrote it up there. A is greater than or equal to 6. So right here it reads, the maximum age for someone to enter the police force is 33 years of age. Okay, so you must be no more than 33 years old to enter. So again, the words no more than, that actually implies less than or equal to, right? So your age has to be less than or equal to 33. So that would be this correct answer right there. A is less than or equal to 33. How about this one? We want to select the appropriate correct inequality. So let's first look at this line right here, or this graph. First question is it an open dot or a solid dot? Open. It's open, okay? And is it going to the left or to the right? To the left. So our x values or our whatever variable they use, x is going to the left, so that would be a less than. It's an open dot. That's not a solid dot, so it's not going to have a solid line underneath it. And it's at the value of -5. So this is the inequality that we want that represents that graph. That's the answer that represents that graph. But if we look at these answer options, they don't even give that. They are all unsolved inequalities. So we actually have to go through and solve each of those one-step inequalities. So on this first one, you would solve it by adding 2, x is less than -5. That's the answer to that first option. This next one, you would have to divide by -2, and that would cause the inequality to flip. It would cause it to become a less than or equal to instead of a greater than or equal to. Why? Because we divided by a negative. Anytime you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip that inequality symbol, and you will get -5 over here. 10 divided by -2 is -5. And for the last one right here, oh, not the last one, but the second to last one, I want to get that x by itself. So what do? Divide by -1, divide by -1, or multiply both sides by -1. And again, you're going to have to flip that inequality symbol. That's going to become a positive x. The less than becomes greater than. Because we divide by negative, that becomes a +5. So we have, it's that one? I'm not sure. Let's see. No, it's not. Actually, it's the first one, right? X is less than -5. X is less than -5. Might as well just go through that last one just for funsies here. Divide by -2, divide by -2. That'll be x is, flip the symbol because we divided by -5. And yeah, if we look through these, we already concluded that the first one will be the correct choice here. So please pick this one. So it is easy, but I mean, we had to do many things here. We had to first write the correct inequality and then solve all these little ones. Yeah, you might have solved this one first, then checked, and we got lucky. That first option was the correct answer. Let's move on to the next question. Same deal right here. They want us to find the correct option that will give us that graph. So let's first begin with the graph itself. What inequality is that? X is less than or X is greater than? Greater than. Why? Because it's going to the right. So X is greater than. Now, is that a solid dot or an open dot? It's a solid dot, so I'm going to put a solid line underneath that inequality, and it's at the value of 6. That's how you write your inequality. Nice and easy, right? Now, which of these multiple choice options give us that? Well, I almost picked that one, but it's not right because it doesn't have a solid line underneath it. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, and let's solve this one-step inequality. How do I solve that? Multiplying by -2, multiplying by -2, that cancels out. You will get X. Because we multiplied by a negative, this guy has to flip. It's going to become a less than or equal to instead of a greater than or equal to, and positive 6. Let's see if that's the answer. Is it? X is less than or equal to? Nope. Our answer is supposed to be greater than or equal to, not less than or equal to. This one, that's weird. It's written backwards, right? So you could read it backwards. It says X is greater than or equal to 6, and that's actually what we want. It's just written backwards. If you want, you could flip the whole thing over, put the X on the left side, the 6 on the right side, but you have to keep the same respect with the original answer. Like, it's opening up to the X, so it has to continue opening up to the X. So you flipped everything, right? And this is the answer that we're looking for up here. X is greater than or equal to 6. And of course, if that wasn't it, then I'd have to go to that last one, divide by -2, divide by -2. You would flip the inequality symbol. That would be X is less than or equal to 6. But anyway, that's the answer. Pick this one. You'll get full credit. Another one of these same type of questions where I give you the graph and I ask you which of the following gives you that answer. So first, let's write the actual inequality that we want here. Let's say X is it less than a certain value or greater than a certain value? Is it going to the left or to the right? It's going to the right. Don't even worry about the numbers. That might trick you. If you see like, 20, 18, 16, it looks like it's getting smaller. But you're going to the right, and to the right is greater, to the left is less. Okay, so it's going to the right, so that is a greater than symbol. Now, is it a solid dot? As you can see, yep, it's filled in. There's no open hole right there. That's a solid dot. So it must have a solid line underneath your inequality. And that value is between -22 and -20. That's obviously going to be a -21. So this is the answer that we're looking for. X is greater than or equal to -21. Does it say X is greater than or equal to -21? No, that's incorrect. This is written backwards. If you wanted to, you could flip the whole thing. But if you do flip the whole thing, you're going to have X is less than or equal to -21. When I flip the whole thing, it's not opening up to the X. It's opening up to the 21. So when I flip it, it has to continue opening up to the... Why did I write 20? That should have been a 21 right there. I'm sorry. But either way, it's not the right answer. So don't pick this one. Okay? Over here, let's solve for this. So what do? Multiply it by
3.
Okay, 3. Multiply by 3. We will have what left over? We'll have a negative X left over is less than or equal to. Notice I didn't flip it because I haven't multiplied or divided by a negative yet. I multiplied it by a positive 3 equals 21. Now for my final step, I need to either get rid of that negative sign by multiplying everything by -1 or dividing by -1. I'm going to divide by -1, divide by -1, and that will cause it to flip. So my final answer is X. This guy has to flip. It becomes greater than or equal to. This becomes -21. X is greater than or equal to -21. And if you look, that is the answer that we're looking for. So it's pointless to continue on. You could if you wanted to, but this is the answer already. So let's pick this one, and we're good to go. So all of our questions, or the majority of our questions, are like this, where I give you a graph. You need to understand what solution that is in terms of an inequality. So once again, let's just label X, And is this going to the left or to the right? To the left, which means less than, right? Left is less. Greater is great. So it's going to the left. That's a less than. Is there a solid line underneath here? No, because it's not a solid dot. If it was a solid dot, it would have a solid line, but it's not a solid dot, so there is no solid line. And that value is 6. So the answer that we're looking for is x is less than 6. And that says x is greater than negative 6. Oh, wait a minute. I messed up. That should have been a negative 6. My bad. But either way, that first one's not correct. X is greater than negative 6, and we want x is less than negative 6. Is this one x is less than negative 6? Let's solve this thing by adding 3. Adding 3. That's not going to work. That's going to be x is less than 0. And that's not true, so we're not going to pick that one. Let's look at this one over here. We need to solve for this one. Let's get x by itself on one side. I would subtract x to get rid of the x on the right side. What you do to one side, do to the other, subtract x. We will end up with x is less than negative 12. That's not it either, so that's not it. Let's try another. We want to get x by itself on one side. Which way do you guys want to move? Get this one to the right or the 3x to the left? What do you guys say? You want to move the 12? Okay, is that what you said? Let's move the 12 plus 12 plus 12. Rewrite it. You have x is greater than 3x plus 12. Okay, we still have x's on both sides. So let's get rid of one of them. I want to get rid of this 3x. We actually didn't take the quickest route, but it's okay. Subtract 3x, subtract 3x. We'll have negative 2x is greater than 12. And now for my final step, what do? Divide by negative 2. Now we are dividing by a negative. So what's my answer going to be? X is what? Less than negative 6. X is less than negative 6. And I believe that's what we're looking for. Yep, x is less than negative 6. So that was the most challenging one. That was the last option. And that is the correct answer. Right here, this option right here. Okay. Another one. All right, so we have an inequality here. What is that inequality? Let's start with x. X is what? Less than or greater than a certain value? Less than, because it's going to the left. So you put a less than symbol. Do I put a solid line underneath it? No, because it doesn't have a solid dot. No solid dot, no solid line. If you do have a solid dot, you do have a solid line. And what value is that? That's 7. So that's pretty simple right there. X is less than 7. Let's see these multiple choice options. How do I solve this first one? Divide by negative 7. Divide by negative 7. Cancels out. We end up with x. What do I do with that inequality? Flip it. That has to flip. So it's going to become a less than. And what is negative 49 divided by negative 7? Positive 7, right? So x is less than 7. Is that what we're looking for? Yes, it is. We got lucky. We picked that first one. It was the correct one. This is it. Pick this one. You get full credit. Next question. We're on number 12 here. Let's start with x. X is what? Less than or greater than? Based on this graph. Less than because it's going to the left. So less than. Do I need a solid line underneath it? No, because it's not a solid dot. So x is less than what? Negative 5. X is less than negative 5. That's what we're looking for. Let's look for it. X is less than or equal to 5. X is greater than or equal to negative 5. And we want just less than negative 5. There it is. X is less than negative 5. Hey, some of them will be that easy. Moving on. What inequality is this one? Let's begin with the letter x. Is it less than or is it greater than? Greater than or equal to. Why or equal to? Because it is a solid dot. So we must have a solid line underneath it. So x is greater than or equal to that value 7. That's the correct answer. That's what you're looking for. And there it is. X is greater than or equal to 7. So what's the inequality right there? x is less than negative 6. That's what we're looking for. X is less than negative 6. That's x is greater than negative 6. Is this guy x is less than negative 6? Well, we need to add 3. Nope, that's going to be x is less than 0. Yeah, it feels like we already did this one before. I think it's duplicated. Anyway, if I subtract x, that'll be x is less than negative 12. That's not it either. This last one must be it. Let me actually solve this a different way. We're going to go plus. I'm going to move the 3x to the other side. It'll leave me negative 6 is greater than x. Negative 6 is greater than x. And that is the correct answer, but it's written backwards. All I got to do is flip it around, put the x on this side, the negative 6 on this side, which means that it has to continue opening to the negative 6. So it has to continue opening to the negative 6. There's our answer, and I believe that's the one that we're looking for. X is less than negative 6. So this last option was the correct one. So what is the inequality that is represented with this line right here? X is...
I think so. It would be less than. It wouldn't be greater. It wouldn't be an inequality since like it's not fully pulled the little circle.
You just said it's going to the left, so it's less than, right? So you put a less than. And you don't put a or equal to. You don't put a solid line underneath it because it's not a solid dot, right? And that is the value of 7. So that's it. X is less than 7. Which one is x is less than 7? Well, wait, did we? I think we already did this one also. Anyway, if we divide by negative 7, this will cause it to flip because whenever you divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality symbol. You have x by itself, you have 7. That is x is less than 7. And I do feel like I've already done this question. And finally, we're going to have a handful of questions where you're just solving these 1 or 2 step equations, inequalities, not equations. So on this one, what would I do to solve it? I would divide by negative 3, that cancels out. You're going to get x, but because you divided by a negative, this guy has to flip. It's going to become a less than instead of a greater than positive 5, because negative 15 divided by negative 3 is a positive 5. X is less than positive 5. Type that in with no spaces between your terms, and that'll be the correct answer. Let's try this next one. How do I solve this guy? So if you're wondering how to type in the inequality, you have the inequality buttons right here, the comma button and the period button, but you have to hit the shift button. So if you want to use or get the less than symbol, you have to hit shift comma, and that'll produce the less than. Or if you want the greater than symbol, hit shift period, and that'll give you the greater than symbol on your Chromebooks. I won't ask you to do a less than or equal to that has a solid line underneath it, or a greater than or equal to that has a solid line. On the type in questions, it's only less than or greater than, which are located right here. And of course, use the shift button when you're typing those in. So on this question, you're going to solve it the way you normally would. Subtract 2. You're going to end up with a negative 7. I do not flip the inequality symbol. This guy right here is going to stay exactly the same, pointing to the left with the x right there. Now, how are you going to type in your answer? I want you to type in the x first, right? So you want the x first, and then it has to open up to the x and the negative 7 second. So you're going to flip everything, put the x over here, the negative 7 over there, and like I said, it has to continue opening up to the x. This is how you type it in with no spaces between your terms to get full credit. So on this one, we want to get the x by itself. I need to multiply by 3 so that the 3's cancel. What I do to one side, do to the other side. I will have a negative x is less than negative 12, because negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. So for my final step, to get rid of that negative 1, to get rid of that negative 1 that's in front of the x, I need to divide by negative 1, I am dividing by a negative, so I must flip the inequality symbol, and I will get a positive 12. So x is greater than positive 12. Type that in with no spaces between your terms, just like the way you see it right here, and you'll get full credit. Last question. We want to get x by itself. Simply add 7. X comes down. inequality does not flip. It does not flip, stays the same because I did not multiply or divide by a negative. I simply added 7 to both sides. And I got x is less than 4. Type that in exactly the way it is with no spaces between your terms, and you'll get full credit there. So we are at the end of this video. I also want to say that there's one more question, a review question from before, where I give you 2 points. You have to find the slope using the slope formula, and then change it to point slope form, and then convert it to slope intercept. So please be aware of that.